when did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Like, is it something that you always like felt, or was there like a turning point?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't grow up in a society where it was really a thing or an option. I didn't know any, I didn't have any to look up to. I didn't have a model for it, you know?
Mhm.
So I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I didn't really know what that was or didn't think about it that often. My family's very like, East Coast, traditional, my mom's an architect, my dad is in finance, so all the adults I knew worked in, a lot of them were in pharmaceuticals because that's where there are a lot of those companies where I grew up, doctors, lawyers, that kind of thing. So I just didn't have it on my radar. But yeah, I've always been very creative, abounding energy, lots of ideas, starting things, starting little businesses. I read an article about one of the key traits of an entrepreneur is naughtiness. Not being bad or mean or evil or ill-tempered, but naughty, like liking to sort of find rules and poke at them and break them if they're stupid, and I've always been that way. I've always liked to sort of push the boundaries and see what things are made of and why is that line there and so on. So yeah, I've always sort of had it in me, I think.
What's like your earliest like memory as an entrepreneur, like the earliest like project that you really like took the lead on?
I loved making films. I'd make like short videos and like take the lead on that and organize everyone. Did that in 6th grade, 7th grade, like right when iMovie came out. I'd make movies for classes or with my friends or whatever. I was always, hosting things and bringing people together instead of, I was always finding myself in the leadership position. I'd come up with some creative idea, get 10 people together for a dinner party or for a trip or for a whatever, stuff like that. I started a business selling t-shirts on an island that only had one. If you wanted a t-shirt from this vacation destination, they only had one design, and I thought it sucked. So I made another design and I made like 6,000 t-shirts and I like sold them all summer and like made money doing that. That was when I was 17, stuff like that.
That's awesome. So you like became an entrepreneur, and but like it was still like auto entrepreneur. What did you think, like what did you imagine being like having a company would be like? How did you envision like your role of, like really like managing people, and growing as a company?
It's funny, like as entrepreneurship,
What type of like what type of like it's more like what type of boss did you think you would be, before it all started?
I think some people make the decision that they want to be an entrepreneur and then they figure out like what company they're going to start, or they start asking themselves questions like the ones you're asking me now. Other people just sort of have an idea or they start solving a problem. You hear a lot of stories of like, I realized that I was gluten intolerant and I couldn't find, or like, this woman I was just talking to, she had kids and she wanted to get cereal for them and was shocked when the cereal aisle was all the same cereals as when she was a little girl and nothing had changed and they all have sugar and it's terrible for you and da-da-da. So she wants cereal for her kids. Why isn't there like a high protein, really good for you cereal? Even the healthy ones aren't that healthy, which is true. So she started a cereal company and they're doing very well. So a lot of companies start that way where it's like, I have a problem. I have like a thing that I want solved. It's not being solved. I guess I'll start to solve it. Oops, I'm an entrepreneur. And that's sort of what I did, right? Like the last episode we talked about, there was a problem. I came up with a solution for it. And then I realized like, oh my gosh, a lot of things could use this solution. I'm going to start a company. But it kind of got pulled out of me. It wasn't like I was sitting there like, I'm going to start a company. What kind of boss do I want to be? So I would say the kind of boss I've been and my entrepreneurial style, and like none of these things were premeditated or planned or studied. They all just have sort of happened and are very instinctual, reactive, gotten advice, learned from mistakes. I think a big thing is being, these are cliches, but they're very important. And I think it's important for life. Being okay failing, being okay wearing that failure, being okay calling yourself out, being like, I fucked up that, I made this mistake, I learned this. If you're always like prideful or repressed or something, you make mistakes and don't learn from them, and then you remake the same mistakes. And sometimes even if you learn from your mistakes, you make too many of them and the company fails. But definitely if you make the same mistake 4 times, your company's going to fail, because you just will run out of money and people and time,
Um, so you talk about failure, like, um, how do you cope with that? Like, do you have some tricks? Like, how do you distance yourself from your failures and don't like make it like, something that directly reflects like who you are as a person? Because I mean, I'm an entrepreneur too, and like there's definitely this time where like I feel like so confident about an idea and then it doesn't work, and it's hard to like not just take it personally and think like, because there's like the situations in which that you feel that you really prepared, as good as you could, and you did your best, in that situation, and then it fails, and it's like, well, I did what I could, and maybe if it didn't happen, that it wasn't meant to happen. But um there's like other times I feel where like there is kind of in the back of your mind this thing that said, maybe I should have done that, maybe I should have like, like changed this or do this differently, and it fails, and like you just like really take it at heart, and like we talk about in this other episode, it's like definitely affect and impact your self-confidence in the future of like
Yeah.
of
Well,
your
the question is, what is it? You just said like it fails. I had an idea and it fails. And like every day we all do like 172 things, right? Like I send this email and I like respond to this and I go to that meeting and I talk to this employee, right? And every day, some of those things don't go as I want them to. So there's failure every day. And then
Yeah.
there's like a level above that, which is like month over month, or like we started a blog. Like that's a bigger thing that's maybe like months of work, and that fails. And then there's like the company, and like so there are layers of abstraction. And I think like for me, maybe this is wrong, maybe this is cocky, whatever. This is just how the code I live by. The company fails when the founder puts down her sword. So like, there are lots of stories, and I've told this one before, like in this format, but Slack is a famous example, right? Where I don't know if you knew this, but Slack was a business to consumer video game company. They were making a game for a computer, like a total, like just completely different thing. And the guy started Tumblr, who started Slack. I don't know if you knew that, but he had some money and he also had a lot of connections. So he was able to raise a lot of money, like $12 million or something, very early.
Yeah.
And he raised from big time investors, and he burned through a lot of it like I did. And he had like 4 million left. And he went to maybe the most famous investors, Andreessen Horowitz, they're a very famous venture firm, crying. And he's like, I failed. I don't want to go to zero. I'd rather give you guys $3 million back. I'm going to give some money back to these other VCs and like return the money, just like it's over, done, right? And Andreessen Horowitz, the Andreessen and Horowitz both apparently were sort of like, well, hold on, like let's talk about it. Is anything going well? What's the problem? And he describes all these problems. They're like, okay, well, something's got to be working. Like, what do you look forward to? What's going well? And he's like, well, we built this tool to communicate as a product team internally because we couldn't find a good way to like really email wasn't fast enough. It's too serious. Like we needed something faster. So we like built this thing and everyone uses it all the fucking time. It's like, it's really helpful. It's really useful. And he like
Mm-hmm.
showed them Slack as we know it. And they're like, just build this. And he did. And he went from being this company to a completely different company and then sold it for a bazillion dollars. So the difference between running into a wall at 100 miles an hour, being like, I failed, it's over, dead, and running into a wall at 100 miles an hour and being like, well, what if I went this way instead? The only difference is whether you choose to continue or not. Whether you put down the sword and say, it's over, I've lost, I'm dead, I'm going to be killed, I'm surrounded. Or if you're like, I will keep fighting until there's like, until you like the sword will hit the ground because you've stabbed me and killed me, or I put it down. But until the sword hits the ground, I'm still alive. And like you listen to my story, right? And like I was torching hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, like bad things were happening, but I at the last minute saved it and I clawed my way. And I again, so I romanticize the like, don't give up, like don't put your soul.
Yeah, definitely, because I feel that like you also pay the price, I mean, mentally, you know. And I think that's what we really want to talk about, like with this in this episode, is like you sacrificed a lot of your mental health in order to save, you know, your company. Can you talk about like about that, about what like
I mean, another thing I romanticize that maybe is unhealthy is like, you know, I saved the company, but this company saved me. So don't forget, like when you create something, you know this as a creative person, as an entrepreneur, as just someone who creates things. When you make something, when you make like something that you're sort of connected to, it's one experience. When you make something that comes from your soul, when it's like it's a physical expression, personification of you, of who
yeah,
you are, and it's out in the world, that's a very personal, it's like having a child. And you know, and so it takes so much to birth that, but you also get so much in return from that existing. So, you know, I've saved my company numerous times, but my company has also saved me and given me a reason for being, raison d'être. It's given me, you know, something to wake up for, something to aim for, something to keep marching towards. It's given me a foil, something to sharpen myself against. Like there are elements of myself that I love that are underdeveloped,
mm-hmm.
you know?
I think that there's like this belief in, you know, in the industry that like all entrepreneurs are like superheroes and are kind of like invincible. And now more and more, you know, we have like famous entrepreneur who share like their stories about like all the, you know, all the hardships that they went through and how it affected their mental health. And you've always been very vocal about it, um about like how, you know, how you, when you felt depressed, like, you know, you were telling us about it. How do you, what was like the work life balance in that? How did you like kind of protect protect your mental health, or did you just actually not like try to protect it at all and just like put everything that you had, you know, into your business even though you knew the consequences of that?
I have a couple of things I want to say. I'll try to keep it concise. So, you mentioned the word superhero. Like, you know, a lot of old superhero movies were very cheerful. If you watch new ones, like the Batman movies that have been made in the past 10 years, um, uh, or even like Spider-Man 15 years ago, like, you know, Spider-Man loves Mary Jane, but
Mm-hmm.
if he is with her, then she's a target and the bad guys will come after her. So he has to sacrifice his love of a woman
Yeah.
to be a hero. Batman, like, you know, they say, you know, he's the hero Gotham needs but doesn't deserve. Like he's villainized. People think he's a bad person and yet he does it anyway. You know, he has a lot of pain, like his parents were killed. He feels right. So a lot of these superhero movies look at the dark side of being a hero, of the loneliness, of the sacrifice, of the pain that goes into building that, of the the origin story, right? So I think, you
Yeah,
know,
but like those are not people that, I mean, we don't really aspire to be them the same way that we aspire to be like a super entrepreneur, or even like a, I don't know, like a celebrity, you know, like we never talk, it's very taboo, like for celebrities to talk about like how, you know, they go through depression, and you know, like I mean, if I don't know if you watched that like Britney like documentary where like they talk about like Britney Spears and how like paparazzi like ruined her life, and she was really like going through it, and people were making fun of her. There's this picture like she's in a cafe, and she's like, she has her baby on her lap and she's crying, and like people are taking these pictures like in her face of like, oh look, like Britney Spears crying, like look at her, she like hit like the bottom line. And it's, you know, there's this
Have you
thing
heard the
about
song
being,
"Lonely" by Justin Bieber?
hmm?
"Lonely" by Justin Bieber. Have you heard that
I don't
song?
really, I don't really listen
It's one of
to
his new songs, and it's like it's a top 40 hit. It's 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. It's very short. It's not, there's nothing about it that should be a hit. And the lyrics are just like, I got famous really quickly. I felt so alone. I hit rock bottom. Everyone was like looking at me and judging me while I was sick.
hmm.
I'm lonely. Like that's it's a devastating song. It's like
Yeah.
so dark, you know. And I have such respect for Justin Bieber
Uh-huh.
because I watched him grow up, you know, because he was like a superstar when I was whatever 15. Um, and I watched him act like a fucking idiot. And then I watch him now. If you watch interviews of him, he's actually like really thoughtful, really measured, really like centered, and like actually has like some artistic integrity and like, right? And like I'm like, this kid went through hell and back and came out somehow as like a well-adjusted, nice person who like genuinely wants to do good in the world, despite being a zoo animal that everyone's poking at and playing with. And you know, he didn't have a fucking life from when he was 12 to whatever. So I deeply pity him and respect him, you know, like deeply, 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 which is a funny thing to say about Justin Bieber, because the temptation is to be like, oh, what a pop star, what a shallow little prick.
Hmm.
I like idolize him. I think he's incredible for what he was able to sustain, you know. Um, there's a Navy SEAL I love that talks about, you know, I remember when we were working together, you were starting to run a lot, you know, and when you're running, it's painful, right? Like your lungs hurt and your legs get heavy, and there's like physicality to running that's quite unpleasant. But you know, if you had never run before and no one's told you about this, and you went running, you'd be like, I'm dying.
Yeah,
Like
you're
I'm
like, I
literally
hate
going
it.
to die. Like get me no, but you'd actually be like, take me to a hospital. Like I am like, what's happening to
Uh-huh.
my body? But you're trained from a young age to know that being winded and having heavy legs and da 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 and sweating a lot and like that's normal. And not just that, but it's in service of like getting in shape, and you get better and better and better. And so people like the pain, like learn to sort of deal with it, like it's sort of part of the experience. And you know, the pain today means progress tomorrow. No pain, no gain, right? And you know, there's this Navy SEAL that's sort of like, why isn't it like that with mental health or with
I was about to say, yeah.
emotional health or with professional progression? It's like you get knocked down, you go through pain, you have hard times, it's painful. I mean, sometimes like my worst depression, my worst anxiety is somatic, meaning it's of the body. Like I feel physical, I feel
Hmm.
depressed or anxious, but I feel physical pain. You know, it hurts. But I've started adopting this mentality that like to put yourself through a challenging circumstance emotionally, mentally, professionally is to strengthen yourself such that you can take on bigger challenges tomorrow. And that it's all in service of running that faster 5K or all in service of running a company better. So I romanticize, so long as it's like healthy and so on, I romanticize the challenge, the toil, and even the pain. Like I romanticize being uncomfortable.
I understand that only to a certain extent. I think that like the danger of depression is it's also like a very like comfort comfortable like place to be at, like it's hard to get out of it, you know. It's like when you're on that like super comfy couch and like you know that you like have to like go run errands, but at the same time you're just so comfy in this couch, you never want to get out of it. And I think that like depression is like, it feels horrible, but at the same time it's like kind of like discomfort of knowing that things cannot get worse, you know, that like
Yeah.
at least that like you control, you know, you have
But
like a
there's a
sense of like,
weird that you're right. I mean, there's a really weird comfort in the discomfort. Like feeling depressed is objectively awful, but when you're
yeah,
in it, you almost like want to perpetuate it. You want it to stay. It feels familiar, safe, comfortable.
exactly.
But it's very weird because you know that it's bad. You know that you feel awful, but you know you just want to curl up in bed and sort of stay in it. It's very weird. You know, for me, there's always I have, you know, a lot of friends that come to me with their depression because I'm so vocal about it, and so they sort of come out of the closet to me that they are depressed or anxious. And some of them have a spark inside them and some of them don't. It's very scary when you talk to a depressed person that has sort of given up, like the little yellow light inside them has died, or they don't know where it is. But for me, and I've been very, very, you know, at my worst, maybe like 7, 8 days in a row where I couldn't leave bed at all, like very depressed, like bad, bad, bad. Lots of therapists, lots of drugs, like all of it. But I don't think I've ever lost the will to try to get through it, to break through, to carry on. And I know exactly what you're talking about with the comfort and like, let me just stay here on the couch thing. But
Yeah.
something deep inside me is like, no. And I push, I'm like, what, there's a clinical term for this that I'm forgetting, but like you sort of take the opposite action of what you're tempted to do. So it's like, no, get up, run those errands. You know, I'm always very proactive about putting the things in my life for self-care. I see not one, but two therapists still. I'm on 5 medications. I meditate, I journal, I eat healthy. I don't drink much alcohol. I go to bed early. I exercise every day. You know, I am vigilant about being
Mm-hmm.
at my best, because James at his best versus James at his worst, everyone, of course, is better at their best and worst at their worst. But my spectrum is so large. Me at my worst is hardly good to anyone, and me at my best runs, you know, several companies. So I do everything to try to get ready for battle, to try to be ready for my
Yeah.
life, you know?
Yeah. So then, you know, like to circle back with what you said, like kind of like you have to go through like some shit for the greater good. I think that unfortunately for some people, you know, like some people never recover from it. Like some people don't have like the strength that you have to like, you know, go against like the the instinct that comes with depression, you know, that strength that like pulls you like, you know, like in your bed and make you like stay for like 7, 8 days in a row, like curled up and
Let's separate two thoughts for a second, because I don't want to be giving advice or saying things about people that are clinically depressed
yeah.
versus like failure and toil and struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a chemical line there that not
Yeah.
everyone crosses. Like there are plenty of entrepreneurs that are failing or think they're failures or struggling that aren't like clinically depressed. And by the way, as per your Britney Spears comment, there are a lot of people that are succeeding that are depressed. So they don't necessarily go together. And like, I'm way more on board with like failure has stuff to teach you, embrace it, contextualize it. It's like what I talked about before. Like where, where are we in the abstraction hierarchy when we talk about failure? Like your day-to-day task failed, or did the blog fail, or did the company fail, and like, there are a lot of things in between a little failure and you being a failure. And you need to be able to contextualize that, like, just because I had to fire 9 employees and my company was not healthy for a little while, I don't think the hub is a failure. Or even if I did, I don't think I am a failure. Right. And so it's just being like, that little misstep right there is making the level above it, or 2 or 3 levels above it, stronger. Like fucking up in
Mhm.
little ways down here is making James the entrepreneur stronger, or the hub, the company, or even the
Uh-huh.
blog. Like every failure strengthens the line above it. So the blog failing makes the hub stronger. The hub failing makes James stronger. The little thing failing makes the blog stronger. So it's all to feed the bigger thing above it. If you can
Yeah, but
frame
like,
it
how
that way.
much failure can you take? You know, like it makes you stronger until it doesn't. I think that it's like I it's an ideal a little bit, because like sure you can like what doesn't kill you make you stronger. I get that, but also like like you said, like 39 39 people like told you 39 investor told you no for like investment in the hub, and then you're like, all right, I'm ready to sell, you know. And then what kind of like save you, and it's also like the context in which like all of this happened in the pandemic, it kind of, but if the pandemic didn't happen,
I would have sold my
you would have sold your company. How do you think mentally you would have processed that?
I would have viewed it as a failure for sure. It would have been confusing because a lot of people that don't know about startups,
Yeah.
I know how to look at an acquisition and I can tell you exactly what happened. You know what I mean? Like when a company's acquired, I can be like, that was a good one, or actually that's failure in disguise. Like there are different flavors of acquisitions. But to like my friend I went to high school with, they'd be like, you started something from scratch. Someone paid you $1 million for it. That's a success. Wow. And meanwhile, I'm like, that's a huge failure. I fired all these people. I fucking suck. I like da 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 da. So that's weird, right? When society is telling you, it's like the prettiest girl in the room that has body dysmorphia, right? It's like every guy's like, you're so hot, and I want to da da da, and she's having sex with all these people and blah blah
Uh-huh.
blah. But meanwhile, she feels alone and scared and completely disconnected to how the world is treating her. Or Britney Spears crying. It's like, I'm sorry, are you a pop star that makes $26 million a year? Like, what's the
Right.
problem? And it's like, well, actually, there are a lot of problems. She feels very alone, disconnected, misunderstood. So that's a mind fuck when the world is like, it's so awesome to be you. And you're like, no. And that's the Batman thing, right? It's like, he's fucking
Hmm.
saving a city. He's like an amazing guy, except his parents died and he has all these demons and he's like very self-hating and dark. It's like, right? So I think I would have struggled with that cognitive dissonance of the world thinking that I succeeded and me knowing that I failed. And how do I connect those two thoughts to
Yeah.
find truth and to find who I am again? And it would have taken time. It would have taken a couple years and hard work and therapy to like close that gap and reconnect with myself again.
Yeah. Do you think loneliness is like a price to pay for success?
Um,
Tough one.
let's put it this way. I think you need to know yourself so fucking deeply. You need to face yourself so rawly. Who am I? What am I good at? What am I bad at? How can I love that whole picture? How can I find something in the world to sharpen myself against that brings the best out of me? That takes a lot of reflection and work.
Mhm.
You know, we live in this world that everyone's realizing this, but this is something I learned through therapy years ago. You could take a quiz to the streets of New York and ask 100 people any question in the entire world, any question, and I guarantee you, you couldn't get 100 people to say yes to the same question. Like, is the vaccine good? It's like, well, 35 people are going to say no. Really? 35 people? Did Trump actually win the election and there was mass voter fraud? Like 30 people out of 100. Is capitalism good? Is the sky blue? I don't care what you are angels real?
Mm-hmm.
More people have
Yeah.
less people don't have Amazon Prime memberships. Only 19% of the country doesn't have an Amazon Prime membership. More than 19% of the country thinks angels are real and living among us. you know, like shit like that. So
Mm-hmm.
to answer your question, no one sees and understands. Like, I'm glad we had this conversation, our last episode. Like, you now have a bit more context for like what I was going through, for what was a painful experience for you being let go from a company. But no one really understands what I was going through. And I don't care if you're talking about your life partner, your business partner, your mom, your best friend, they can understand 92% of your experience, 96, 94, 87, but never 100. No one knows exactly what it's like to be you and in your head. And so
Yeah.
to succeed, you must 100% understand yourself and 100% know how to extract greatness from yourself. And other people can't help you with that completely. That journey is only yours to take. So
Yeah,
do
I think like during my philosophy classes, sorry, I'm cutting you, but during my philosophy classes in high school, you know, like I had like an amazing teacher, and like we had this whole like thing about essential loneliness. I'm translating right now, like I mean, what you call like solitude essentielle, and it's exactly like learning to, you know, accept that no one is ever going to understand fully who you are, especially because when you develop relationship with people, with companies, because you see a reflection of yourself, so you're already like biased, like the way you understand people, you know, you only see through like your lenses of like, what does this person have in common with me? And then being an entrepreneur is, you know, bringing something new to the table, so something that people haven't heard of or are not like educated about. So yet again, you put yourself in a position of you understand the vision because it's yours and it's new, and then you have all this work of like translating it into so many different ways so the vision gets widely shared and understood by your audience. But then you have to like come to terms with the fact that there's going to be a lot of people who don't understand what the vision is, and even if they do understand, they don't share it.
yes.
And that itself is already so isolating, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I was listening to a really interesting debate that was so heady about like, is there absolute good and bad?
Yeah.
Is there like something we all can all agree on? Like mass
Hmm.
genocide of 100 million people, is that bad? And like most people are like, yeah, that's bad. Um, what is truth? Where does truth come from? So like, let's say it comes from God. And how does God convey the truth? Through the Bible. But what's the problem? Well, people read the Bible and then teach it. And the problem is, if someone's reading, they're interpreting and putting their own bias and interpretation and then sharing it. But that human conduit of a priest or preacher sharing the Bible is already putting an overlay of fallibility, of humanness, which means that the truth is distorted, which means that no two teachings of the Bible are the same, which means that even hardcore devout Christians technically believe subtly different things from each other. There is no absolute truth because there's interpretation. And it's the same thing as a
Even
company.
writing it is an interpretation, you know? Like,
Anything. And so like the question is like, is there even absolute truth? Like, is the Bible truth? I would argue maybe no. But even if like, let's just say for me at the hub as the founder, like my vision is truth. That's truth. But then how do I convince 16 people when you were working at the company to see it my way, understand the full picture, understand their part in the picture, be bought in, when there's a million things that get in the way and people misunderstand, misinterpret, whatever, hate me or frustrated, have problems at home, da da da. So it's so hard. So yeah, I mean, like to succeed as an entrepreneur, to succeed as a human being, there is a loneliness. I think what you're talking about, by the way, I've read a book by this guy Jean-Paul Sartre. He's like
Sartre.
a Sartre. He's a French existentialism.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So like this is a philosophy born in the 20th century in France, and like Jean-Paul Sartre was one of them, and there were like two or three others, and this is one of the things they talk about, you know. Um, so yeah, there's a loneliness of like
if you want to fully understand yourself and fully actualize who you are, body and soul and spirit and everything, you need to go so inward and so deep and have a conversation with only yourself that yes, it is lonely and no one person can help you with that. Only you can. A mixture of people can be helpful. Like my therapists are very helpful, and I hope my wife one day really understands me, and maybe a friend, and maybe you, and maybe da da da. They all understand 90%, and the overlap means that I'm understood completely by a group. But you can never have like one person that's like, I'm gonna
No,
link arms with you, and I see it, I understand exactly where you're at. Only you can do that.
absolutely. As an entrepreneur, like especially when you start a company, I feel like, it's like this startup mindset where you have to like just like work 24/7. You have like those like 18, 20 hours work day, and like there's nothing else. Yet like it's proven that having a good like mental health, having like a good like physical condition makes you a better entrepreneur. So what's the balance there, when you start your company, like how do you manage that? Because like of course you want to do more, you want to do like everything that you can for and to give a chance, like a true chance for your business to succeed. But at the same time, it's like, can a business really succeed if you like mentally or physically is if you're not like 100%?
Yeah, I mean, I hate hustle porn, right? Like um I think it starts with what we just said, understanding yourself very deeply. Like who am I and what do I contribute? When do I shine brightest? When is my energy source at its greatest? Like what does it take for me to get to that place, and what happens when I'm at that place? So I know, for example, like the things when I put my shoulder into it at the company, like the company really moves. And then other things, other tasks, other areas of the company, less so, because it's not my like calling, shall we say, right? So I've learned what I'm good at, and I've learned how to optimize myself to be in that headspace. I roomed with runners, a lot of them went to the Olympics, like very, very, celebrated high end runners. They took their recovery almost more, not, almost as seriously as the training. They train very, very hard, but like, I'd be like, hey, Don, come out with me to this party. He'd be like, I'm going to be on my feet for 3 hours. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I need to fully recover. Like I ran 17 miles today. Like I can't, so he understood like the game and how he was keeping score. The game was he was going to run a mile on a track and try to run it in less than 3 minutes and 56 seconds. That's the game, and that's how he's keeping score. And he understands nutrition. He would sleep in an altitude tent, recovery, of course, training and running and pushing himself hard. But he understood how those things all fit together, and he understood that if you run infinity miles every week, your body breaks down and you lose the game. If you take too much time to recover and don't eat it all, you lose the game. It's a balance. So for me, it's like, what's the game and how am I keeping score? The game is I know what I'm good at. I know where I shine brightest, and I know how to get myself there. For example, I work great really early in the morning. I also go to bed at 9. I don't work after 5 p.m. I take breaks at 2 p.m., but I'm also grinding at 5 a.m.
How long
That's
did it take you to understand that routine? Like, is it something that you knew already before starting your company, or like, or did
No,
you
it
also
started.
make these mistakes that so many other people like did?
One of the things I wrote down is like I'm taking this from a Tim Ferriss podcast, but dark motivational force and light motivational force. Dark motivational force is like, I suck, I'm a failure, people are judging me, I don't want to suck. You're like running away from badness, and that's what's like motivating you. I don't want to get fired, whatever. Light
Yeah.
motivational force is like, I feel inspired, I'm in flow, I love what I'm doing, I want to help people, da 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 da. When I started the company, I was 98.4% dark energy force. My dad gave me money to start this company. I don't want to fuck up and disappoint him. People are watching. What is my family going to think? What's this girl I'm starting to date going to think? What do my employees think? I suck. I'm a failure. I'm the worst. So I would wake up really early. One of our first clients, as you remember, was Rise, which is a coffee. It has 200 milligrams, which is like two cups.
2 cups of coffee.
2 cups of coffee in each can. And I would wake up at 4:30 or 5, boom, boom. So 4 cups of coffee, fucking rip it. Let's go. Like, and it
You're
was
crazy.
But it was like, that's the darkest thing in the world. I mean, it would be worse if I told you I was snorting like cocaine or something, but I was forcing myself to jolt my body up to work hard at an early hour because I was so afraid of you thinking I was a failure, or my dad thinking I was a failure, or just being bad, right? And it's taken years, and also a lot of self-work and therapy and stuff on the side, but I love myself a lot more. I see my value in a way that I never saw it before. I don't think I believed that I even had value when I started the company, or really even when we worked together. Like it was, imposter syndrome. Like, when is everyone going to figure out that I have no idea what I'm doing? Right now, I actually do feel like I know what I'm doing, and I love myself more. And I love what I do. I love what the hub does. I love a couple other things that we've started. I started a venture fund and so on. Love all of it and feel inspired by it. So I'm, it's 90% light energy force, where I'm like so excited to make a difference, make an impact, like do stuff, connect with the kinds of people, I look at my calendar for the day. I'm like, how do I get to talk to these people? Like, these people are so interesting, like dynamic. I'm learning. I'm like, this is so cool. The hub is like successful enough, and other things are that like it will never be a zero now. That option's gone. It might be like not great or not as big as it could have been, but like I won't fail. The people I care about don't think I'm a failure. They might think that I'm just so-so or something, but I've eliminated that option. I no longer think about that. It no longer haunts me. So I still drink a lot of coffee, and I still wake up at 5, but I do it because that's when I work best. And I feel like I'm working in the dark. Like everyone else is asleep. I love this so much. Like I hit it hard, but
you do it for you. I think that
yeah,
the thing that you were doing in the past as well is like you were letting other people's like opinion and like getting to you. And there's the thing as an entrepreneur, like if you really want to make like a change, like something different, is you have to be selfish, like selfish, and really like protect like your energy, because it's special and it should be strong enough, so like you don't need other people's validation. And I think that in today's world, it's especially like challenging. I mean, social media, is just like rating other people. Like every day, like people put a rating on you. It's like, oh, I only get like 50 likes on this picture. Like what? Like maybe I don't look good. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
And being an entrepreneur is similar.
there's this quote that I like have been obsessed with for years. That's what you're talking about. It's an Einstein quote, right? And like Einstein, in some of his early days, like people thought he was just fucking nuts. And then naturally he's Einstein. He's like maybe the most famous genius of all time. Like everyone knows who that is.
Yeah.
But the line between madmen and genius is very small. So there's a quote by him that says, "The question that makes me hazy, am I or the others crazy?" So it's like, some days you're like, I have a special spark. I'm special. I have something to say. Like the world is missing something. They're not seeing something that I see, and like I'm unique and I'm special. And the others are crazy and they're missing it, and you need to trust your voice and believe in yourself. And then you have days where 39 investors tell you no, or something fails or whatever, and you're like, wait, maybe they're all right and their opinion is right, and I'm crazy. And I actually don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I have a dumb idea. Oh, fuck.
Like I'm living a complete lie. What the fuck am I going to do? I have 15 employees, right? And like you play these games with yourself where you go back and forth between being like, I'm God's gift. I mean, some of these founders,
It's called being hypomanic. I think I was yesterday like doing research about this. Like,
yeah, I am hypomanic actually, right?
mhm.
I don't, true mania is believing that you're, the Messiah and jumping out of a window and so on, which is, by the way, I'm not saying that as a joke. Like it's very awful. And like, I know people that are bipolar. Hypomania is just like very extreme energy, passion up. You're still lucid though, or so they say, right? Like the line is
Yeah.
fine, but I am like when I get, me, like when I get going, I burn very hot. There's a lot of energy happening. And so the question is like, is he brilliant and creative and passionate and has so much to offer and like it can fuel a whole brilliant company? Or did I cross some line and I'm actually just kind of like crazy and like misguided and don't know what I'm doing? And you play these games with yourself. Who knows?
I mean, like because you have like this insane amount of energy, it's also what fuels people who are like more like low energy but still like so valuable to a company, like there's like, I think we'll touch this on a different episode, but like not everyone is a leader, not everyone is an entrepreneur, and there's some people who do really well working for other people, for people like you, especially because like there are people who find their energies in someone else's passion. It's like the way you like talk about your project is so animated that like other people are like, whoa, I get it. Doesn't mean that they could do it themselves. And same, like I think like especially nowadays is like TikTok generation, people are very like, so like entrepreneur, the way like they like influence and everything. There's a misconception about like who can really do this, like for a living, because there's more to it than just the bright side of like, oh yes, like I make my own money, like if like, I'm like independent. There's like, okay, like, but in like step 2, step 3, when like your business grow, you have to like understand that it means that you can deceive people, that like sometimes you're gonna make these tough decisions that you did, you're gonna have to like lay off, you're gonna have to like rethink your like business model and disappoint maybe some people that you care about, but it's
Yeah, I mean, I was on a panel the other night and someone asked some questions similar to what you're saying now. And one of the other guys on the panel said, being an entrepreneur is half being Navy SEAL. Navy SEAL is like the top special forces unit in all of our armed forces, and they're really good in the water. Half Navy SEAL, half pirate.
yeah.
And Navy SEALs are known for being like so disciplined and precise, and pirates are known for like breaking the rules and stealing shit and whatever. And I was like, it really rubbed me the wrong way. So I actually spoke up and I was like, that's literally not it at all. Like 1% of the time is Navy SEAL, 1% of the time is pirate, and 98% of the time you're the guy on the deck of the boat at night who has to like keep watch. And it's like cold and maybe it just started raining a little bit and the ocean's just going by. And maybe once every 4 nights, there's like something important that needs to be done or that is exciting or animated. But like mostly it's just like staying awake, staying vigilant, dealing with the cold, not driving yourself mad, right? Like entrepreneurship's a game of attrition. I've been doing this for 5 years. Like you can drive yourself fucking crazy playing mind games with yourself, doubting yourself. So rarely is it this like heroic, and so I think a lot of people love launching their Squarespace site or their Shopify site and making their logo and telling their friends and updating their LinkedIn and posting about it on their Instagram story. And I started this thing and here's the logo and here's the mission. And everyone's like, that's so cool. Wow, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. You're so brave, da, da, da. And maybe it is exciting for a month or two, but then Mike Tyson says everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. It's a famous American boxer, right? And then you get punched in the mouth and stuff sucks a little bit. And most people are like, oh yeah, like, no, what am I doing? This is not it at all. So you need to be able to like last through rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of that, and even learn to like it and seek it out. And
Right.
the whole running analogy of like you're in pain but it's making you better, and falling in love, these are all gag worthy truisms, but it's like it's the journey, not the destination. It's like finding calm in the chaos. It's like loving yourself before you can love others. You know, if you're going to succeed as an entrepreneur, unless you happen to have the 1 in a million company that just, these are things that you need to master. Like you need to master falling in love. You know, I have right next to my desk this thing, there is no finish line.
Right.
And
It's
maybe
it's
that's,
it's the appreciate the process more than just like the outcome.
yeah, I mean, what I love about that quote is that it's kind of changed for me over time. I think it started as like the finish line keeps moving. So like you always have to grind. You always have to chug the 2 coffees. You're never good enough. You're never good enough. More, 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 more. There is no finish line. Like that finish line just moved. It's farther away. It's farther away. It's always on the horizon. So it's a way for me to justify hating myself. That's how that quote started. And then now it's like you become Britney Spears and you make all this money, but you're miserable. Like there is no, the top of the mountain isn't what it's all about. Like the accomplishment, the finish line isn't what you think it is. So you damn well better like the process. You better enjoy running. You better just like get into a zen place where you're just like running the marathon. And it's not about breaking the tape. It's not about like the finish line. It's about actually going out and enjoying running for 26 miles.
Especially because the world we live in moves so fast. I mean, the technology like that gets developed like every year, you know, is like what you envisioned for your business when you started it 5 years ago. That is it like still, could you still apply like the exact like initial idea that you had in today's world? Or like that's also how I see it.
Shockingly, yes, you know, and maybe that's the sign of a good
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, I mean, like, yes, like the original idea, like you said, everything's changed, but also, actually, here's a good one. It's a French quote for you. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même.
Ouais. C'est
The
vrai.
more, the more that changes, the more that's the same, right? Like everything about the hub has changed, but the fundamental insight of a group of people creating content for brands better than a boardroom on Madison Avenue. Like that's what started the company, was that insight. And that's what we are still. And there
Maybe
were
it's
a lot
just
of,
more the way of doing it.
yeah, there were so many detours, building the
Yeah.
community, building the software, getting the brands in, it being small brands and now big brands focusing on just food and beverage, having 15 employees, having 3 employees, that like there are a million things that have changed, but the initial vision, the insight, the aha moment is still what drives me, right?
Mm.
um and I'm lucky in that regard that I happen to have an insight that has stood the test of time. And I think it's possible to change that key insight, but
Yeah, I mean, I think most like there's a lot of things that work in cycles, you know, like where we kind of like go back to where we started. It just looks a little bit different, but the essence is the same. I mean, I at least from what I see in fashion, you know, like the way like fashion evolves is like we always go back to the same trends over and over again. My last questions regarding like this topic, to go back to really like loneliness and entrepreneurship, like how before you hired anyone, I mean, I'm sure that you've been like an auto entrepreneur like for quite a long time. Like what were the things that you did to like not feel so lonely when you didn't have anyone else?
so ironically, like I have this today. I have a chief of staff who's like really deep with me. You know that Shannon Bray was very deep with me for years. Like I've always had that person who I could call, like that person
Mm,
very, very deep. Chris Laverne at Thought Catalog, even though he didn't work for the company, he was that
yeah.
deep. Like it was someone that I could really, they had all the necessary context that I could like, when I had those moments of am I the other crazy and I started feeling echoes in my brain, I could like call someone and be like, hey, like Mizel, like, you know, this like specific little thing, like, like, what do you think? Is this right? Like I had that person to kind of be a sanity check for me. Like first it
Is
was,
that what people? Is that what you recommend, like to like young entrepreneurs to have that one person, maybe like that doesn't necessarily like is connected to your company, but that one person that you can call,
yeah,
you know, when like.
so I think just having sounding boards, right? Like you need to, it's like a cell phone pinging off of cell towers. So it pings off of three to triangulate your location. Like pinging, I don't think any, like we said, no one person has all the answers. So it's
Yeah.
hard to put that much pressure, even if it's a co-founder, on another human. But
Yeah.
sometimes it has been like one person for me, but mostly it's been like, you know, in the very early days, one of my friends, I gave him 1% of the company, which is a lot. And we had dinner once every 2 weeks for like 3 hours. And we just talked like this. Sometimes it was very specific stuff. Sometimes it was high thinking, but I just had like a sort of a therapist almost for my company where he
Uh-huh.
knew everything and I could go to him. And that was at the same time as Ja'Cory, who like basically started the company with me. You know, I had him and I had, maybe that was it in the early days. And like in your era of the company, you know, I had Shannon, I had, trying to think, like, you know, Jameson, you might recall, like came in at the very end there. Like
Yeah.
now I have a board. I have, you know, 12 people that are on my board, and every once a month we have a 2-hour meeting. And they're all people like Melissa from Rise is on it, you know, people that I really, really, really respect and I think are super smart. And I have 12 towers to ping off of. And sometimes the board is all in agreement, sometimes they're not, and they have different opinions on things, but it gives me a chance to like, instead of arguing thoughts in my brain, I can have a discourse and a dialogue with other humans to stress test an idea. Like, is this right? Let me argue this side and you argue that side, and we'll figure it
Mhm.
out, as opposed to like rattling in your brain.
Yeah. It's like when you stare too long, you know, it's like something, it's almost like you can't see it anymore. And it's the same as I with your company is you need sometime that like fresh outlook on everything you're doing. Like someone who maybe doesn't have all the information but can still like understand somehow like where you're coming from because like
Yeah,
it's clear enough.
that's what Jameson did, by the way. Like the company wouldn't exist today if Jameson hadn't helped. So like he was a consultant professionally, you know, and he was in between jobs. He was going to start a company that he's now started. And I was like, hey man, before you start your company, I'm sure you like could use a little cash, right? Because you're about to start a business. Why
Hmm.
don't you come? I'll pay you 5 grand for 2 weeks. You know, it's not all the money in the world. I don't have that much cash, but I'll give you 5 grand. Just come for 2 weeks and like shadow me and help me think about this. And we got dinner like 3 times a week, so maybe 6 times over the 2 weeks. He was in the office all the time. He was talking to people, and he helped me see so much inefficiency in our business and like where,
Beyond the emotional, like
yeah,
that
right.
you.
Here I am. I've just been rejected by 39 VCs, spending way too much money. I care about every single person. The idea of firing even one person, let alone 9, like made me want to throw up. So if someone's coming in who has no emotional connection, very smart. Is he 100% right? No. Like, did I do everything he said? No. But did I have someone come in with fresh eyes and be like, dude, here are some problems. Like, why aren't you addressing these? And it's like, oh, fuck, you're totally right. And I did. And if I hadn't, I think I probably would have figured out what needed to be done. Last episode, you're like, you gave me too much credit. You're like, you knew what to do, or you know, and I think I probably would have figured it out, but a little too late. If I'd even did a month later to fire all the people I did and shut down the office, and even a month, we probably would have run out of money.
Yeah.
You know, so I needed to, like, if I hadn't made the decision right when I did, and it took someone I really to this day very much respect in Jameson to be like, here's where you're fucking up. And then it also took me to be humble enough to be like, instead of being like, what are you talking about? And being defensive, I was like, oh, fuck, you're totally right, man. Like, you're
Yeah.
right. I need to do something like tomorrow. And
Yeah.
it took that. It took that. Am I or the others crazy? He let me know that I wasn't crazy, that my company did have promise. It just had a few problems. and I
Mhm.
could cut off a few limbs and save the rest of the body.
Yeah. To add to that, maybe, and to conclude, is I think as a creative, it's a little different when like your art is your business. To add this like financial dimension to like what you love to do, and it can sometimes be like poisonous, you know. And it's funny, I just finished this book yesterday about like this famous like Hungarian photographer who came to the US, and he was like really amazing. Then he took this job to do like some like interior photography, so it was just like taking pictures of like homes. And meanwhile there was like other amazing photographer like Cartier-Bresson or like Kappa, who were like becoming like the like best photographers of the 20th century. And
I saved up a shit ton of money and I bought that.
oh, wow, wait,
That's Cartier-Bresson.
awesome. Yeah, it's funny, it's like I'm sure you would love this book. Actually, I'm just reading books that I find in the street, and they're always like really amazing. But anyway, it's just that, so it took him like 12 years of working this job one day to just say, well, fuck it, you know, I just want to be a photographer and I want to shoot whatever I want to shoot. And I think it's important, you know, as a creative to like take not even project, but just like take time, like a few hours in a week to like do something that is like that is not for money, that is completely like just because like to remind you why you do what you do, you know, for a living, because like because you just love it. I think there's like enormous pressure that almost like takes the joy away from it, you know, whenever like you have like those big campaigns for brands. As a photographer, it's like fuck, like, you know, I really can't fuck up, when like being a photographer is also taking a risk that things maybe like are not gonna go the way you plan them to, but like it's also in this like margin for error that like some like amazing stuff happen. But like this margin for error, you don't really have it when you work with like big budgets and big companies. So to me it's essential to like take some time to really like do something that is not going to impact your career. And like it might maybe you're gonna shoot the best thing you ever shot in your life. But also if it's not the case, if like all the pictures that you took are trash, it's okay, because you just enjoy that time, you know, like.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, like a point you made that I deeply resonate with, and I've seen play out. Like my uncle, was a doctor, loved helping people and having patients, and then he started doing a really good job. And as you get better, you become like an administrator at a hospital. You like run a department or something, right? So he doesn't
Mhm.
actually have time for patients anymore.
Yeah.
And like my dad, when I was a kid, like loved finance and like making deals, helping companies like buy other companies. And then
Yeah.
he like got a few promotions and started like managing people, and he got further away from the deals.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
like I love photography, I love connecting people, I love campaigns for brands. And like the bigger the hub got, the more it was like raising money from venture capitalists. It's like
Yeah.
worrying about our finances, legal, you know, whatever. And you get distance from the thing that made you start in the fucking first place. So
Mhm.
yeah, like at times I've gotten into shooting again and photography. Like I've gotten into connecting creative people in different ways. Like, you know,
That's
that's
awesome.
why even when you were at the hub, we still did like those dinners where like, you know, we made a dish for every photographer that showed up, or just to like remind myself and to feel connected to like the bee, you know,
Yeah.
the idea of bringing like of cross pollinating and bringing the best of every flower together into one like thing, and not losing that. So I totally
Yeah.
agree.